everybody. I'm Glenda with Shaking Hands Art with Fralins and Friends. I am going to be painting a scene of a backdrop. It's going to be a river with people fishing. I grew up on the Big Blue River. It stretches from Kansas and Nebraska into Kansas and on down. Tonight I'm simply going to do a basic background, I guess. I don't know if I can call it basic, but I'm going to try and get the river and then a sandbar. I've been a little rushed today, so if I seem a little out of breath and doing, I don't know, well, I did stuff today, but we'll see where I get with it. We'll see where it takes me. In here, because it is kind of a muddy river. Well, now that's too much mud. I mean, if you look down in the water, you're not going to see the fish. You hope for the fish. That didn't work quite how I wanted it. I'm going to need to put some blue on the side and... Okay, I'm going to start down here farther. It does have a lot of fish, and it's fun to catch them. And a lot of people like to eat them. It's full of catfish and oh golly, I suppose crappie. Some people call it crappie. We always call it crappie. Just your basic fish that you find in these air waters. But mostly people like channel cat or catfish coming out of there. Yellow cat. Carp, it can be eaten, but you really need to... Carp is not a really a good eating fish. It's very bony. But people do eat it. You pretty much have to pressure cook it so that the bones are softened way up. So I don't know how it was. Maybe fish soup. We never had fish soup. It would have to be a large enough carp where you could easily get around the bones when you're taking the meat off or trying to fillet, because it has bones like you wouldn't believe. Anyway, that's going to be the river. It still looks very blue, so I'll probably put more unblue in it. How does that sound? Unblue. Did I name a new color? Now there are spots where there are, at least one spot I know of, where there are a lot of rocks and kind of some rapids. Not like what you would see, you know, on like one of those river rafting things. It's just a small area where there's a bunch of rocks. Kind of like that, I guess. So the water does bubble through there a little bit. I'm going to let that dry before I do anything more to it. A little more mud in here. Give it some movement. Okay. depending on where you are getting in to the river at, there can be a very tall riverbank, or it can be short. It just depends, you know, sometimes. And now what do you call them? That military unit that takes care of waterways and bridges and stuff. Can't think of it right now. Anyway, they went through a couple of years ago because there'd been quite a bit of erosion. And so they wanted to put a bit of a stop to it. So, because it's on a farm, it runs through a farm or several farms. And so it can erode from one side and deposit it on the other, and a little bit it doesn't matter, but over years it can turn out to be quite a bit. So Army Corps of Engineers, does that sound right? Anyway, they went in and they put a lot of gravel on part of one end to kind of slow that erosion. Of course, we're going to be seeing from one side, so I'm not going to put such a high bank on it. But we did have, now Dad would go and he would check out, certain places where he knew swimming was possible, and Mother threw a fit if we ever put our heads under the water, because it was not very sanitary. You generally find your sandbars out in to the water because they're deposited there as the river, and of course over time, some sandbars just stay where they are. It's not like they're a temporary thing. And this resembles one of the sandbars that we used to fish from a lot. But it's still too dark. It's too dark for sand. There could be a lot of brush, but it's going to be partially overgrown with weeds, lots of weeds. There were some trees, but a lot of weeds. And yes, that did at times include poison ivy. I think I remember getting it at least once, but how many years ago? I don't know. I do remember getting very, very, in the pasture there was a weed. It was not poison ivy. It was some kind of a weed that was very noxious. We were picking some of the beautiful little white flowers on it for our mothers. Well, whatever the sap was in those things, it was not very good for little girls' eyes. Our eyes were all swollen shut. Our eyes were burning by the time we got in the house. And the mothers, our cousins were there and stuff, and the mothers were like, well, let's get that washed off. And because we tried to show them the flowers, and they said, oh, thank you, but we're going to toss those. So they kind of knew. I don't think they really had looked out there to see what was there. I mean, they grew up pastures like that. They probably didn't think much of it at the time. I'm sure they did later. not real steps, just some maybe logs or something that somebody's put in to make it so that you don't roll down the bank. There. That way you don't roll down that bank when you're trying to get down there to fish. 'Cause I mean, that was the way it was sometimes. Or it's just some rocks or some logs or something put along the path. You know, they clear that part out. This is where I'm at right now. Now, sometimes I don't know how a painting will exactly turn out. I just start and then I work from there. I mean, yes, I've got the thing in my head, but what I picture in my head and what goes on the canvas might look a lot different than what I've got pictured in my head. Okay, well, I will see you tomorrow. We'll do some more on this. I do have a request for a haunted house, and I will try to put that on next week's schedule. I will put the haunted house on my schedule for next week. I hope that is clearer. So you'll have there will be a short tomorrow, and then I'll do more work on this and see you Friday. I hope you have a good evening, and we will see you soon. Love you.
Our hearts beat to the city streets. We began to feel the fire.